we started the cross product, and then we were rudely interrupted by time, and we had to stop. So, by definition of cross product, when we cross two vectors, A and B vectors, we get a whole new vector that is perpendicular to both A and perpendicular to B vector. All right? So, when I have my A and B vector as a plane, that's contained in a plane, when I cross these two vectors, I get a whole new vector that is perpendicular to my A and B vector plane. Okay? So it brings a whole new dimension, which is the normal unit vector. This normal unit vector has magnitude of 1 pointing perpendicular to my AB plane. All right? So the direction of that normal vector can be found because you could either go, up or down, right? Above the AB plane or below the AB plane. That direction can be found by using the right hand rule. So the right hand rule is used first, you have to use your right hand, right? If you don't know which one is your right hand, just do this, right? And then if you see L, that means that's your left. Just looks like L, so that's your left. So here's your right hand. Now use your fingers and point them along the first vector. So if I'm doing A cross B, I place my fingers along A, and then I curl it towards B in the shorter of the two angles. Here's like less than 180. This is greater than 180. So you go for the angle that is less than 180. So if I curl my fingers along A towards B in the lesser than 180 angle, my thumb represents the direction of the cross product. So in our particular case, when I do A cross B, then my thumb, which is pointing out of the page, will be considered as my direction of the cross product of A cross B. In our case, it would be positive z-axis, or simply out of the page. All right. Now, if I want to do B cross A, I place my fingers along the first vector I'm crossing, which is B, and I curl it towards A. I can't do it. So I have to flip it and then curl it towards. Oh, there you go. Now look at my thumb. It's pointing into the page down the negative z-axis, and that's into the page, and that circle with the, cross with circle in it, and this is the representation of the arrow feather you'll see when it's going into the page, because you only see the feathers of it. The dot with circle around it means you'll see the tip of the arrow coming at you. All right, and that's the exact representation for mathematics and physics. So note that A cross B is negative B cross A. All right, so the direction will be in the opposite direction. All right. So, by definition of A cross B, which is the magnitude of A times magnitude of B times the sine of the angle between A and B, n hat. Well, if I look at the sine function actually is it starts from 0 and then goes up to 1 and then comes back down to 0 and then finishes up again at the negative side. So this is 0 degrees, this is 90 degrees, and this is 180 degrees. All right? And of course this is 1. The maximum value of sine is 1. So at 90 degrees, you'll get the maximum value of cross product. All right? At 0 degrees and 180 degrees, you won't get any cross product at all because it'll just turn into 0. All right? So A and B, when they are perpendicular to one another, your sine of theta is equal to 1. So you'll get the maximum value of sine, right? So A cross B is equal to A B n hat, because sine of 90 is 1. Okay? So instead of, A B sine of 90 degrees n hat, it just becomes A B n hat. Okay? When they're parallel or anti-parallel, right? So when they're 0 degrees or 180 degrees, sine of 0 or sine of 180 is 0. So you get the minimum value. Right? At 0 and 180 degrees. And A cross B will vanish to 0. All right? So when they're parallel to one another or anti-parallel to one another, when you cross them, they will go to 0. So here we need to figure out the directions of A cross B. All right? So here I produced some of these. Now, if you have hard time visualizing this three-dimensional axis on a two-dimensional plane, Ben, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question about n hat. So is n hat just either negative or positive one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was just a little confused on
And
that.
yeah, because n hat is unit vector, which means
Yeah,
magnitude of 1, but we don't know, like when you say positive and negative, like we really don't know exact direction of n hat until we figure out, you know, what two vectors you're crossing. Because it could be, above the AB vector plane or below the AB vector plane is what you're trying to say.
yeah, that's what I meant. So
Yeah. So because the plane itself could be like this, like, you know what I mean? And then if it's like above the, this would be like the positive n hat, that would be negative n hat for you, but that still is arbitrary. Yeah.
okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So if you were to use x hat being 1 unit in the x direction, y hat being 1 unit in the y direction, z hat being 1 unit being z direction. Okay, let's practice how we can use x cross y. Now remember, x is this way. You're crossing towards y. So here, you have to put your hands like this. You're crossing towards y. Even though my thumb is pointing like, weird way, it's actually going to be pointing in the positive z axis. All right? So x cross y will produce positive z hat. Now you have to practice that. All right? So if you ever get a tattoo with a physics gangster symbol on it like this. This is physics gangster symbol. So here's your x, here's your y, and here's your z, right? And always keep that orientation. Your pointing finger is x. Your bird finger is your y. You shouldn't be. That's kind of rude. So your bird finger is your y. You know, and then your thumb is your z. Okay. So keep that orientation in your x, y, z axis system. Okay. Whether you draw it like this, okay, where your x is coming sort of out of the page and your y is the horizontal and your z is up and down, Or you can draw this X, Y, just like the way we always do, but your Z will be coming out of the page. So as long as you keep this orientation of your XYZ axis, you should be fine. Now let's take a look at Y cross Z. Here's your positive Y. You're crossing towards Z, so you do this and then you do that. So you'll get positive X. Boom. And then you do Z cross X. So here's your Z, and you're crossing it towards X, like this way, and then you'll get your positive Y as your result. I posted this blank three-dimensional axis, I think, on the Schoology. If I didn't, I'll post it. I thought I did. So now let's do Y cross X. So here's Y. You're going to cross it towards X, so it looks like negative Z. All right. So those of you who are having a hard time visualizing this, think of it this way. If you look at it where like this, like that, okay? If you have three-dimensional thing, and here's purple is your X. This is your Y. And then this is Z. So X cross Y will produce Z. Right? Y cross X will produce negative Z. Y cross Z will produce positive X. You guys get that? All right? So that's very important that you could visualize this and cross many different ways, right? There's so many combinations of crossing this thing. It's pretty intense, all right? If you're still having trouble visualizing that, what you can also do is you can also create your XY plane. Create your XY plane on a piece of paper, on a flat two-dimensional piece of paper like this. So create an X. So here's your X, and this is your negative X. Oops. And then create your Y this way. So here's your Y, and this is your negative Y, right? And then if you were to, I wish I had a thinner wire for this. Wow, oh. Wow, here's my Z. Here's my Z. So you could think of it this way as your XYZ, like that, okay? So your X cross Y will produce Z, and then Z cross Y will be negative X, and so on. So hopefully that will help you visualize your XYZ axis a little bit better. All right? So make one of these at home, or if you go to I don't know if AC Moore is still open, but if you make one of these like with a balsa wood like this, students found it helpful if they actually had this during their test, and then they actually had this next to them so they could actually do the A cross B's and B cross A's and all the other stuff. All right? So make one of these Johns if you want to. And keep it with you for the rest of your life and give it to your significant other as wedding gift, and they'll love you forever. If they like physics. Anyway, so let's do Y cross X. Right? Y cross X. So if I do positive y cross positive x, and it looks like I'm going to go negative z as my, right, negative z hat. Z cross y will produce negative x, and x cross z will be negative y. And then you could go like x cross x, y cross y, z cross z are all zeros. Everybody with me? All right then. Humor me. What's negative x cross positive y? Come on, somebody. Negative x cross positive y. Yeah, that's correct. Negative z hat. What about negative z hat cross negative y hat? Yeah, Ben?
Negative x.
Negative x is correct. Good. One more, one more. Positive x hat cross negative z hat. Kate?
Negative y hat.
Positive x cross negative z. Positive x cross negative z would produce positive y hat. Okay? Positive x. You have to use your right hand. I see so many students like writing with their right hand, they use their left hand to do things. Like, you can't do that, right? If you're right handed, you got to drop your pen and then you got to start doing this. That's very important. So here, this would be positive y hat. I remember one time we had a like different principal, and she was an English major. She came in to observe my class when I was a very young teacher, and they were taking a test, right? And everybody basically was, taking this cross product test. And guess what? When she walked in, she was walking around, and all the kids were working hard. And then, as simultaneously, right?